My name is Abigail Carter, and at 22, I thought my college graduation would be the day my parents finally showed up for me. Instead, they chose a Super Bowl party over watching me receive my diploma. I cried alone in my car while their Facebook filled with party photos. The next morning, they called asking to borrow $3,000. That moment changed everything. Before I continue my story, if you are watching this, please let me know where you are from and hit that subscribe button. Looking back, I should have known what would happen at my college graduation. The pattern had been there my entire life. But hope is a stubborn thing. My father Robert and mother Carol always had a knack for prioritizing social events over my milestones. My earliest memory of this betrayal came when I was 7 years old, starring as Dorothy in my elementary school production of The Wizard of Oz. I had practiced for weeks, memorizing every line perfectly. The night of the performance, I peeked through the curtain searching for my parents' faces in the audience. Their seats remained empty. Later, I learned my father had refused to miss a crucial basketball game on TV, and my mother decided to keep him company rather than come alone. The pattern continued throughout my childhood. When I won the regional spelling bee in 5th grade, they were at a neighbor's barbecue. My middle school orchestra concert where I played a violin solo, they sent their regrets because of a dinner party with my father's colleagues. My high school honor society induction, they promised to come but called last minute about a spontaneous gathering at a friend's lake house. Despite the constant disappointment, I excelled academically. Perhaps I thought achievements would finally make them notice me. I graduated high school as valedictorian with a full scholarship to State University. I remember my high school graduation vividly. My parents arrived 15 minutes late, missing my valedictorian speech. They sat in the back, scrolling through their phones during the ceremony, and left immediately after to attend a cocktail party, not even staying for the traditional family photos. Through high school, I worked 3 jobs simultaneously to save for college expenses not covered by my scholarship. I waited tables at a local diner on weekends, tutored middle school students after classes, and worked at the library during summer breaks. Every dollar went into my savings account, which I monitored carefully. My maternal Aunt Gail was my saving grace during those years. Unlike my parents, she attended every event she could, cheering loudly from the audience. She took photos, framed my certificates, and told me repeatedly how proud she was of my accomplishments. Without her, I might have given up trying altogether. The contrast between how my parents treated me and my younger sister Danielle was stark. 3 years my junior, Danielle received the attention and celebration I craved. My parents rearranged their schedules for her soccer games and dance recitals. They threw elaborate birthday parties for her while mine were often forgotten or minimally acknowledged. I never resented Danielle for this disparity. How could I blame her for something that wasn't her fault? Instead, I tried to be for her what our parents weren't for me, attending her events when they inevitably found excuses to miss them. The financial pattern started in high school. When I was 16, I had saved nearly $2,000 for my first car. One weekend, my father asked to borrow the money for an investment opportunity that couldn't wait. Promising to return it with interest within a month, he emptied my account. The money never came back, and the car remained a dream. This scenario repeated throughout my teen years. My college fund, meticulously built from summer jobs, disappeared into a home renovation project. Birthday money from relatives mysteriously solved my parents' short-term cash flow problems. When I left for college, I hoped the physical distance might improve our relationship. I still desperately wanted their approval, their love, their attention. During freshman orientation, I met Jennifer and Audrey, who would become my closest friends. They came from loving, supportive families and were shocked when they witnessed my parents' behavior firsthand. During family weekend, my parents canceled at the last minute because a neighbor was hosting a wine tasting event they simply couldn't miss. Jennifer's mother, Barbara, hugged me that weekend and said, "Honey, You can share my mom anytime. That simple kindness made me cry in a way I hadn't allowed myself to for years. Audrey's parents adopted me into their family traditions, sending care packages and birthday cards, inviting me for holidays when going home felt too painful. In sophomore year, I met Thomas in my psychology class. Our relationship developed slowly as I struggled with trust issues. How could I believe anyone would consistently show up for me when my own parents never had? Thomas was patient, reliable, and kind. He never missed a date, always called when he said he would, and celebrated my achievements with genuine enthusiasm. Through him, I began to understand what healthy relationships looked like. During junior year, I started seeing the university counselor to address my family dynamics. Dr. Maxwell helped me recognize the toxic patterns and emotional neglect that characterized my relationship with my parents. She introduced concepts like emotional unavailability and conditional love. Still, despite intellectual understanding, the emotional hurt remained. Some childlike part of me believed that if I achieved enough, succeeded enough, my parents would finally see me as worthy of their time and attention. I doubled down on academic excellence, taking maximum credit hours each semester. I joined research projects, published papers as an undergraduate, and secured prestigious internships. I became known among faculty for my dedication and work ethic. When senior year arrived, I had job offers and graduate school acceptances waiting. I was selected as departmental valedictorian for graduation, an honor that filled me with pride and, foolishly, hope that finally my parents would show up for me. My college journey had been exceptional by any standard. I maintained a 4.0 GPA while double majoring in international relations and economics. The dean knew me by name. Not for disciplinary reasons, but because I had made the dean's list every semester without exception. During junior year, I secured a competitive research fellowship that allowed me to spend a summer studying economic development programs in Southeast Asia. By the time graduation approached, I had 3 job offers from prestigious firms and acceptances to graduate programs at Columbia, Georgetown, and University of Chicago. Graduation represented more than academic achievement. It symbolized my resilience, my ability to succeed despite the lack of parental support that many of my peers took for granted. I wanted my moment of recognition, and more than anything, I wanted my parents to witness it. I began planning 3 months in advance. The ceremony would take place on February 10th, a Sunday. Yes, Super Bowl Sunday. But the graduation was scheduled for noon, leaving plenty of time for any football festivities afterward. I ordered graduation announcements in November, carefully selecting the design and wording. I mailed formal invitations to my parents with campus maps highlighted to show the best parking options. I researched hotels nearby and sent them recommendations with links to make reservations. This means everything to me, I told my mother during our monthly phone call. I'll be giving the valedictorian address. Dad's name will be in the program as my parent. Please make sure you both come. Of course we'll be there, Abigail, my mother assured me. We wouldn't miss it for the world. I sent weekly reminders as the date approached. My Aunt Gail, unable to attend due to a scheduled surgery, sent me $500 as a graduation gift. I used the money to purchase plane tickets for my parents, eliminating any financial excuse they might offer. I emailed them the confirmation numbers and flight details. Everything is taken care of, I explained. Your flights arrive Saturday afternoon and depart Monday morning. I've reserved a hotel room for you at the Marriott near campus. I made dinner reservations at Costello's, the most upscale restaurant in town, for a celebration dinner after the ceremony. I spent hours with Jennifer shopping for the perfect outfit to wear under my graduation gown, a navy blue dress that looked professional yet special. 2 weeks before graduation, my father mentioned the Super Bowl during our phone conversation. We're thinking of hosting a party this year, he said casually. The Wilsons and Thompsons are interested. Maybe the Garcias too. My stomach tightened. Dad, that's my graduation weekend. Remember? I sent you the plane tickets. The ceremony is at noon, so you'll be back home in plenty of time for the game. Right, he said distractedly. We'll figure something out. When I called my mother later that day, she assured me they were planning to attend. Don't worry about what your father said. We know how important this is. As graduation week arrived, my anxiety increased. My parents became increasingly difficult to reach by phone. When we did speak, they were vague about their travel plans. I began offering compromises. If you're worried about missing the game, we can find a sports bar after the ceremony, I suggested. Or we can watch it at my apartment. Thomas is helping me decorate for a small gathering. Thomas had indeed spent the day before hanging streamers and arranging flowers in my small apartment. He knew how much my parents' attendance meant to me, though he had witnessed enough disappointments to be skeptical. Just prepare yourself, Abby, he advised gently. I hope they come, but I don't want to see you devastated if they don't. The night before graduation, I called my parents repeatedly. They finally answered around 9 o'clock. We're in the middle of party preparations, my mother said. Background noise nearly drowning her voice. But we're planning to be there, honey. Get some sleep. Something in her tone made my heart sink, but I clung to hope. Perhaps they would surprise me, showing up unannounced after making me worry. I finished practicing my valedictory speech, my voice catching as I rehearsed the line thanking my family for their support. That night, I laid out everything for the next day, cap and gown pressed and hanging on my closet door, navy dress and sensible heels beside it, speech note cards in my purse. I set 2 alarms, though I knew sleep would be elusive. Tomorrow would be the culmination of 4 years of hard work. Surely, finally, my parents would be there to see it. I woke before my alarm on graduation day, a mixture of excitement and anxiety pulsing through me. The February morning was crisp and clear, sunshine streaming through my apartment windows. A perfect day for new beginnings. I showered, dried my hair, and applied my makeup with extra care. As I zipped up my navy dress, my phone chimed with a text message. It was from my mother. Sorry, honey, can't make it. Big game today, and everyone's coming over. Dad says the tickets are non-refundable, so you can get a credit for next time. So proud of you. I stared at the screen, reading the message 3 times before its meaning fully registered. They weren't coming. The plane tickets I had purchased with my aunt's gift money would go unused. They had chosen a Super Bowl party over their only daughter's college graduation, where she would be giving the valedictory address. I sank onto my bed, still clutching my phone. The sob that escaped me came from somewhere deep and primal. Years of disappointment culminated in this moment, yet somehow I had convinced myself this time would be different. My phone rang. Jennifer. We're on our way over. 20 minutes. I couldn't form words through my tears. Abigail? Are you okay? Jennifer's voice sharpened with concern. They're not coming, I managed to say before dissolving again. We'll be there in 10. I tried calling both my parents multiple times. Each call went straight to voicemail. By the time Jennifer and Audrey arrived, I had moved from sobbing to a hollow numbness. They found me sitting on the edge of my bed, still in my dress, makeup streaked down my face. Oh, Abby, Audrey whispered, sitting beside me. Jennifer took charge, gently wiping my face clean and reapplying my makeup. We're not letting them ruin today. This is your achievement. Your moment. Somehow I managed to put on my cap and gown. We took pre-ceremony photos in my apartment, forcing smiles that didn't reach my eyes. Thomas arrived to drive us to campus, taking my hand and squeezing it silently. If you want to skip the ceremony, we would understand, he offered. I shook my head. No. I've worked too hard to miss this. We arrived at the auditorium where graduates were lining up according to department and alphabetical order. I took my place at the front, designated for those giving speeches. Through the open doors, I could see families filing into the audience, carrying flowers and balloons. Many wore proud smiles, some already dabbing at emotional tears. I scanned the crowd, some irrational part of me still hoping to see my parents slip into the family section I had reserved. The ceremony began. I delivered my speech on autopilot. Words about perseverance and future potential flowing automatically while my mind remained disconnected. I spoke about overcoming obstacles and finding strength in adversity, drawing from personal experience without revealing the specific pain I was enduring at that very moment. When I returned to my seat, several professors nodded approval, unaware of my internal turmoil. Then came the procession of graduates. Each name announced, each student walking across the stage to receive their diploma. Cheers erupted for each person, families standing and applauding their graduate. When Abigail Carter, summa cum laude, echoed through the auditorium, I walked across the stage alone. From the audience came supportive cheers from Thomas, Jennifer, and Audrey, trying their best to fill the silence where my family's voices should have been. Dean Whitaker shook my hand and whispered, "Exceptional speech, Ms. Carter. Your parents must be very proud." I nodded mechanically, not trusting my voice. After the ceremony, faculty members approached to congratulate me. Professor Harrington asked where my parents were, and I manufactured a vague excuse about travel complications. Each inquiry was a fresh wound. The post-graduation gathering in the University Commons felt surreal. Families clustered around their graduates, taking photos, presenting gifts, planning celebration dinners. Jennifer's parents hugged me warmly. Audrey's father insisted on taking photos of me with my friends. Their kindness only highlighted my parents' absence. "I need some air," I whispered to Thomas, slipping away through the crowd. I made it to my car in the parking lot before breaking down completely, alone in the driver's seat, still wearing my cap and gown. I sobbed until my chest ached and my throat was raw. A notification sound from my phone interrupted my grief, with blurred vision. I opened Facebook to find my parents had posted dozens of photos of their Super Bowl party. Their living room decorated in team colors, a spread of food covering the dining table. Friends and neighbors crowded around the television. My mother had captioned the album, "Best Super Bowl Party Ever. Worth all the preparation." The elaborate party setup was a stark contrast to the simple request I had made, show up for my graduation. Just be there. The last photo showed my father raising a beer bottle in a toast. Timestamp indicating it was taken during my valedictory speech. A tap on my window startled me. Thomas stood outside, concern etched on his face. I unlocked the door and he slid into the passenger seat without speaking. For several minutes, we sat in silence, his presence a comfort I couldn't articulate. "Your speech was amazing," he finally said. "Thank you for being here," I replied, the words inadequate for the depth of my gratitude. "Always," he promised, though we both knew such promises had been broken before. We returned to the celebration, where I managed to push my pain aside enough to participate in the requisite photos and conversations. My friends created a protective circle around me, deflecting questions and creating moments of genuine joy despite everything. Instead of the family dinner I had planned at Costello's, our group of friends claimed the reservation. Thomas insisted on paying, calling it his graduation gift to me. During dinner, I checked my phone repeatedly, still hoping for a congratulatory call or message from my parents. None came. That night, back in my apartment, I carefully hung my cap and gown in the closet. I placed my diploma on the desk, running my fingers over the embossed lettering. Despite everything, I had accomplished this. No one could take away my achievement. I fell asleep hoping that tomorrow my parents would call, perhaps with an apology or at least acknowledgement of my accomplishment. This hope, like so many before it, was misplaced. The morning after graduation dawned gray and cold, matching my mood. I had slept fitfully. Dreams filled with walking endless stages, looking for familiar faces that never appeared. When my phone rang shortly after 9, My heart jumped. Finally, my parents were calling. Perhaps to apologize, to explain, to congratulate me properly. "Hello," I answered, hearing the hope in my own voice. "Morning, Abigail." My father's casual tone held no hint of remorse. "How was the ceremony thing?" "The graduation ceremony was fine," I replied carefully. "My speech went well. Several professors complimented it." "That's nice," he said distractedly. "Listen, we're in a bit of a situation here. The party yesterday got a little out of hand. Wilson put a hole in the living room wall, and the plumbing in the downstairs bathroom backed up with so many people using it. Plus the transmission in your mom's car is making that noise again." I waited, already knowing what was coming. "We need to borrow $3,000, he continued. "Just until the end of the month when my commission check comes in." Before I could respond, I heard my mother's voice join the call. "Abigail? Are you there? You know we wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. This is family, honey. Family helps each other out." The audacity was stunning. Not only had they chosen a party over one of the most significant events of my life, but they were now asking me, a newly graduated student, for money the very next day, without even a proper acknowledgement of what they had missed. "I graduated yesterday," I said quietly. "I was valedictorian." "And we're very proud," my mother replied quickly. "But right now we need to focus on this issue. Your father can send you the account details. $3,000 should cover everything." My mind flashed back to all the times they had borrowed my money, my college fund that disappeared into their kitchen renovation, the car savings that funded their weekend getaway to Atlantic City, the birthday checks from relatives that somehow always solved their short-term cash flow problems. None of it ever repaid. "I need to think about it," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "What's there to think about?" my father demanded. "We need the money today to get these repairs started." "I'll call you back," I said, ending the call before they could pressure me further. I sat on my bed, phone in hand, mind racing. A text from my father appeared almost immediately with his bank account information, followed by another from my mother. "Please hurry with the transfer. We have the repairman waiting." I called my Aunt Gail, needing perspective from the one family member who had consistently supported me. "They didn't show up," I said when she answered. "And now they want $3,000 for party damages and car repairs." Aunt Gail's sigh carried years of dealing with her sister's behavior. "Oh, Abigail, I'm so sorry about graduation." "I'm not surprised, but I'm sorry. As for the money, you know what happens when you give them anything. It never comes back," I finished. "More than that," Aunt Gail said. "It enables them to continue treating you as their personal bank instead of their daughter. They missed your graduation for a party, and now they expect you to pay for the consequences of that party. Do you see the pattern?" I did see it with painful clarity. All my life, I had been giving, hoping that if I gave enough, they would finally give something back. Attention, support, love. But the exchange was never equal. "What do I do?" I asked. "What do you want to do?" Aunt Gail countered. "Not what do you think you should do, or what would make them happy. What do you want?" What I wanted was to stop the cycle, to stand up for myself, to acknowledge that their behavior was not normal, not acceptable, and not something I had to tolerate any longer. I spent the next hour calculating the total of all the money my parents had borrowed over the years. From my first babysitting jobs to graduation gifts, adding up everything I could remember. The final sum made me gasp, over $20,000. Money I had earned, saved, been gifted. Money that had disappeared into their wants and needs without consideration for mine. Decision made. I crafted a careful response. I would not be sending money this time. Not for party damages from an event they chose over my graduation. Not for car repairs they should have budgeted for themselves. Not one more dollar until they acknowledged the pattern and made efforts to change it. I typed and deleted multiple messages before settling on a simple, direct approach. I cannot send money this time. I'm just starting my post-college life and need my savings for my own expenses. I hope you understand. The response was immediate and explosive. A string of text messages from both parents. After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat family? We gave you life and this is how you repay us? I guess that fancy education taught you to be selfish. My father's final message was the most cutting. If you can't help your family in their time of need, don't bother calling yourself our daughter anymore. My hands shook as I read the messages, but something had shifted inside me, where once their disapproval would have sent me scrambling to comply. Now I felt a strange calm beneath the hurt. I was seeing clearly for the first time. I called Thomas, needing to share what had happened. They asked for money for Super Bowl party damages. I explained, my voice breaking slightly. $3,000. The day after they skipped your graduation for that same party? His tone contained controlled anger. Please tell me you said no. I did, I confirmed. And now they're saying I'm not their daughter anymore. Abby, Thomas said gently, from what you've told me about your childhood, when were you ever treated like their daughter? The question hit me with the force of revelation. When indeed? When had they ever put my needs first, celebrated my achievements, or simply shown up when it mattered? The answer was painful but freeing. Never. By afternoon, my phone was flooded with passive-aggressive messages from my mother. I guess we'll have to cancel our dental appointments this month. Your father will have to work overtime at his age with his back problems. I don't know how we'll face the neighbors with that hole in the wall. Each message designed to maximize guilt, a tactic that had worked flawlessly in the past. But the spell was broken now. I saw the manipulation for what it was. Jennifer and Audrey came over that evening, bringing dinner and supportive friendship. They sat with me as I showed them the messages, their expressions shifting from shock to outrage. This is not normal, Abby, Jennifer insisted. Parents don't treat their children like ATMs. And they definitely don't disown them for refusing to pay for party damages, Audrey added. Their validation helped strengthen my resolve. The physical symptoms of anxiety I usually experienced during confrontations with my parents, the shaking hands and churning stomach, began to subside. In their place came a sense of righteous anger and, surprisingly, relief. The constant need to please unpleasable people was exhausting. Setting this boundary, while painful, felt necessary and long overdue. The final message from my parents came just before midnight. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us. I stared at those words for a long time, turning them over in my mind. After all they had done for me. What exactly was that? The question deserved an honest examination, and the answer was illuminating in its emptiness. 2 days after graduation, I decided a text message conversation wasn't sufficient for what needed to be said. I got into my car and drove the 3 hours to my parents' suburban home, the place where I had grown up but never truly felt at home. The familiar streets brought back a flood of memories, most tinged with the constant undertone of seeking approval that was perpetually withheld. The 2-story colonial looked the same as always, meticulously maintained on the outside to impress neighbors while hiding the emotional neglect within. I parked in the driveway behind my mother's Mercedes, the car with the supposedly failing transmission they needed my money to fix. My hand hesitated over the doorbell. This house represented my childhood, yet I felt like a stranger approaching it. I had my own key but chose to ring the bell instead, already establishing a boundary in this small way. My mother answered, surprise registering on her face. Abigail? Why didn't you tell us you were coming? Her eyes darted past me, perhaps checking if I had brought anyone else. We need to talk, I said simply. May I come in? The living room showed evidence of the recent party, though not the disaster they had described. A small patch of wall near the television had been repaired and needed painting. Some furniture had been rearranged. Nothing that justified an emergency $3,000 request. My father emerged from the kitchen, a beer in hand despite the early hour. Finally decided to help your family out, he asked, no greeting, no acknowledgement of my graduation 2 days prior. Actually, I came to talk about graduation. About the party you chose over it. About the money you asked for afterward. My voice was calmer than I expected. What followed was awkward small talk. My parents attempting to divert the conversation to mundane topics while I persistently brought it back to the issues at hand. Finally, when it became clear I wouldn't be distracted, the real confrontation began. I worked for years for my degree, I said. I was selected as valedictorian. I bought your plane tickets. All I wanted was for you to be there. It's just a ceremony. My father dismissed with a wave of his hand. Just a piece of paper. You got the degree either way. Robert, my mother interjected. What your father means is that we're proud of you regardless of whether we saw you walk across the stage. This isn't just about graduation, I continued. It's about a pattern that's existed my entire life. You missed my elementary school play for a basketball game. You skipped my high school honor society induction for a lake house party. Every milestone, every achievement, there was always something more important to you. My mother's expression hardened. You've always been too sensitive, Abigail. Making everything about you. My graduation was about me, I countered. It should have been. We have social obligations, my father said defensively. The Wilsons have been our friends for 20 years. We couldn't cancel a Super Bowl party we host every year. You knew about my graduation for months. You had the plane tickets. You promised you would come. Plans change. My mother said with a shrug. That's life. You need to be more flexible. The conversation escalated, years of unspoken hurt pouring out of me. I brought up specific examples from childhood through college, times when their absence had left lasting wounds. For each, they had a justification, an excuse, a reason why I was wrong to feel hurt. And then I continued, less than 24 hours after choosing a party over my graduation, you asked me for $3,000. Money you needed because of the very party you prioritized over me. That's what family does, my father insisted. They help each other out. When have you ever helped me? I asked quietly. When have you ever put my needs first? The question hung in the air, met with stunned silence. Neither of them had an answer. In that moment of clarity, I realized nothing would ever change. No achievement would be enough. No compromise would satisfy them. They were incapable of acknowledging any wrongdoing, any responsibility for the pain they had caused. I can't do this anymore. I said finally. I need space from this relationship. What does that mean? My mother demanded. It means I'm setting boundaries. I won't be sending money. I won't be visiting for a while. I need time to figure out what kind of relationship is healthy for me to have with you, if any. My father's face flushed with anger. You don't get to dictate terms to your parents. Actually, I do. I replied, a newfound confidence in my voice. I'm an adult. I get to decide who is part of my life and how they treat me. As the argument continued, my younger sister Danielle came downstairs. Drawn by the raised voices, she stood uncertainly in the doorway, witnessing our parents' inability to take responsibility or show empathy. Before leaving, I pulled Danielle aside for a brief conversation. This isn't about you, I assured her. I love you, but I need to break the cycle. I understand more than you know, she whispered. They do the same to me now that you're gone. I left my childhood home with a mixture of profound loss and unexpected liberation. The drive back to my apartment was filled with tears, but also with a sense of having finally stood up for myself. For the first time, I had named the dysfunction and refused to participate in it any longer. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with possibilities I had never allowed myself to consider before. What would life look like if I truly freed myself from the constant pursuit of parental approval? What if I went somewhere far away? Somewhere I could reinvent myself without the shadow of their expectations and disappointments? I opened my laptop and began researching. Graduate school options, job opportunities, places far from the familiar landscape of disappointment. Around 3 a.m, I discovered a teaching program in Japan seeking recent college graduates. English teachers needed immediately. Visa sponsored, housing provided. The position started in 4 weeks. With trembling fingers, I completed the application, attached my resume, and wrote a cover letter emphasizing my adaptability and independence. I submitted everything before I could second-guess myself, then finally fell into an exhausted sleep. When I awoke around noon, an email notification showed on my phone screen. The teaching program had responded already, impressed by my qualifications and eager to interview me via video call. We scheduled it for that afternoon. The interview went surprisingly well. My double major, academic achievements, and clear communication skills made me an ideal candidate. By evening, I had a formal offer. The program coordinator needed an answer within 48 hours due to visa processing timelines. I called Aunt Gail immediately. "I've been offered a teaching position in Japan," I blurted out. "It starts next month." "Japan," she repeated, surprise evident in her voice. "Abigail, that's the other side of the world." "Exactly," I replied. "Maybe that's what I need right now." Distance. A completely fresh start. After discussing the details, Aunt Gail said what I needed to hear. "If this feels right to you, then do it. You've always made thoughtful decisions. I trust your judgment." That night, I used my savings to purchase a one-way ticket to Tokyo. The confirmation email brought a rush of emotions: terror, excitement, doubt, and overwhelming freedom. I was choosing myself, perhaps for the first time. Aunt Gail offered her garage for storing belongings I couldn't take with me. "And you always have a home with me," she added, "whenever you want to come back." As I looked around my small apartment, I realized how few of my possessions truly mattered to me. A new life was waiting across the ocean, and I was ready to claim it. The 2 weeks that followed my decision passed in a blur of preparation. I gave notice to my landlord, began selling furniture, and sorted through belongings to determine what would go into storage at Aunt Gail's and what would fit into 2 suitcases for Japan. Each item I handled prompted reflection. What did I truly need for this new chapter of my life? My parents' reaction progressed through predictable stages. First came dismissal, treating my decision as a dramatic gesture rather than a concrete plan. My mother left voicemails asking when I would get over this phase and come for Sunday dinner. My father sent terse texts suggesting I was being theatrical about the graduation incident. When they realized I was serious, panic set in. Suddenly they wanted to visit, to talk things through, to understand what was happening. I recognized these as attempts to regain control rather than genuine interest in my perspective. I maintained my boundaries, communicating only through brief, factual messages about my plans. Their final strategy was sabotage through guilt. My mother called crying about health concerns. My father mentioned financial troubles again. Both suggested my departure would devastate my sister. Each manipulation tactic was designed to make me reconsider, to pull me back into the dysfunctional dynamic I was fighting to escape. Thomas and I had several difficult conversations about our relationship. We had been together for nearly 2 years, building something I valued deeply. "I could try to come with you," he suggested during one tearful discussion. "You have medical school starting in the fall," I reminded him. "This is your dream." We decided a long-distance relationship would be too difficult given the time difference and the uncertainty of when I would return. Our final night together was bittersweet, filled with memories shared and futures diverging. When he dropped me at my apartment afterward, his lingering hug conveyed everything words couldn't. "You deserve this adventure," he whispered. "You deserve to be free." Jennifer and Audrey were more supportive, helping me pack up my apartment and celebrating my courage rather than mourning my departure. They organized a farewell dinner with our closest friends, presenting me with a journal for documenting my journey. "Write everything," Jennifer insisted. "The good, the bad, the bizarre. We want to hear it all. And we're saving for tickets to visit," Audrey added. "So find the good restaurants." The morning of my departure arrived with startling finality. My apartment was empty. My life condensed to 2 suitcases and a carry-on backpack. Aunt Gail drove me to the airport, her presence a steady comfort in the emotional chaos. "You can always come home," she reminded me. But I have a feeling this is exactly what you need right now. Standing at the security checkpoint, I felt the magnitude of my decision. I was 22 years old, flying alone to a country where I didn't speak the language, leaving behind everything familiar. Terror mixed with exhilaration as I waved a final goodbye to Aunt Gail and stepped into my new reality. The 14-hour flight gave me ample time for doubt and second-guessing. What if I couldn't adapt to Japanese culture? What if I was a terrible teacher? What if this escape was just running away rather than moving towards something better? By the time the plane landed in Tokyo, anxiety had nearly overwhelmed my initial determination. Stepping out of Narita Airport was an assault on the senses. Bright signs with unfamiliar characters, announcements in Japanese, crowds moving with purpose in every direction. I clutched the welcome packet from the teaching program, following the detailed instructions to find the shuttle bus that would take me to temporary housing. My first Tokyo apartment was tiny even by New York standards, a studio with a kitchenette and bathroom barely large enough to turn around in. But it was mine. Free from emotional manipulation and painful history, the first night I lay on the unfamiliar futon listening to the sounds of Tokyo filtering through the window, feeling more alone and more free than I had ever been. Orientation for the teaching program began the next day. I met fellow English teachers. Kimberly from Canada with bright red hair and a boisterous laugh, David from Australia with sun-weathered skin and endless stories from his travels, and several Americans like myself, seeking adventure or escape or both. The first week of teaching was terrifying. My students ranged from businessmen needing English for international conferences to housewives learning for travel to teenagers preparing for university exams. Despite my academic achievements, nothing had prepared me for explaining English grammar rules to 20 confused Japanese adults staring at me expectantly. I made countless mistakes. I spoke too quickly, used idioms they didn't understand, created lesson plans that fell flat. Each night, I returned to my tiny apartment exhausted and questioning my decision to come here. But each morning I tried again, learning from yesterday's failures. Haruka, a Japanese teacher at the school, became an unexpected ally. She invited me for coffee after noticing my frustration following a particularly difficult class. "First month is always hardest," she assured me in careful English. "Students like you, they see your effort." With Haruka's guidance, I began learning basic Japanese phrases and cultural nuances that made daily life less bewildering. She explained proper chopstick etiquette, taught me how to navigate the complex subway system, and helped me find a more permanent apartment in Shibuya district. Weekly video calls with Aunt Gail became my lifeline to home. She delighted in my stories of cultural mishaps and small victories, offering encouragement when homesickness struck. My sister Danielle occasionally joined these calls, our relationship growing stronger despite the distance. My parents' communications arrived sporadically, alternating between angry messages about my abandonment of family and performative interest in my new life. I established firm boundaries, responding only to respectful communication and ignoring the guilt trips and financial requests that still occasionally appeared. Gradually, teaching became easier. I developed effective lesson plans, learned each student's strengths and challenges, and found satisfaction in their progress. My Japanese vocabulary expanded beyond basic phrases, allowing me to navigate daily life with increasing confidence. 3 months into my time in Japan, I realized I hadn't cried about my parents in weeks. The constant ache of seeking approval had diminished, replaced by pride in my growing independence. I was building a life based on my own choices rather than reactions to their behavior. During school breaks, I explored Japan with fellow teachers. We hiked partway up Mount Fuji, wandered through ancient temples in Kyoto, and got delightfully lost in the narrow streets of traditional neighborhoods. Each experience expanded my understanding of not just Japanese culture, but of myself outside the confines of family expectations. One of my adult students, Emmy, invited me to dinner with her family, an honor I later learned was rarely extended to foreigners. Her parents welcomed me into their traditional home, serving homemade dishes and asking thoughtful questions about America through Emmy's translation. The warmth and genuine interest they showed made me acutely aware of what healthy family dynamics could look like. "You are always welcome here," Emmy's mother told me in halting English as I left. The simple kindness brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I developed new skills and interests. A weekly calligraphy class taught by an elderly sensei who corrected my technique with gentle hands. Cooking lessons where I learned to prepare traditional Japanese dishes, my teacher laughing at my clumsy attempts to roll perfect sushi. An international teacher group that met monthly for hikes and cultural exchanges. Michael, a fellow American teacher from Chicago, gradually became more than a colleague. Our friendship developed slowly, weekend explorations of Tokyo turning into dinners and conversations that stretched into the night. Unlike previous relationships, I didn't rush into emotional dependence. My time in Japan had taught me to value my independence even as I welcome connection. "You're different from other Americans I've met here," Michael observed one evening as we walked along the Sumida River. "More self-contained." "I had to learn to be," I replied, sharing more about my family background than I had previously revealed. His response was thoughtful rather than pitying. "That explains your resilience. You've had practice rebuilding after disappointment." 6 months into my Japanese adventure, a phone call with Danielle revealed that our parents were still treating my departure as a temporary phase. "They talk about when you'll come to your senses and come home," she reported. "Dad says you'll run out of money eventually and have no choice." I laughed at the irony. I was saving more money teaching in Tokyo than I had ever managed in America, with housing subsidized and living expenses carefully budgeted. For the first time in my life, no one was borrowing from my accounts. "They don't understand that this is home now," I told my sister. "At least for the foreseeable future." The geographical distance had provided emotional clarity I couldn't have achieved otherwise. 3,000 miles of ocean created a buffer that allowed me to see my family dynamics objectively, to recognize patterns I had been too close to identify before. As my 1-year anniversary in Japan approached, I felt a profound shift in my identity. I was no longer defined primarily as the neglected daughter seeking approval. I was Abigail Carter. English teacher, expat, explorer, friend. The painful graduation day that had catalyzed this journey now seemed like a distant memory belonging to someone else, a necessary breaking point that had propelled me toward freedom. On the 1-year anniversary of my arrival in Japan, I took the day off and visited Tokyo's Skytree, the tallest tower in the city. From the observation deck, I could see the sprawling metropolis in every direction, a landscape that had transformed from frightening and foreign to comfortingly familiar. Standing there, I reflected on the person I had become during this year of independence. The teaching contract I had signed in a moment of desperate courage had been extended for a 2nd year at my request. What had begun as an escape had evolved into a life I genuinely loved. My Japanese language skills had improved from basic survival phrases to conversational fluency. I had moved from the tiny initial apartment to a more spacious one shared with Kimberly, the Canadian teacher who had become a close friend. My relationship with my parents had shifted dramatically. I no longer accepted calls or messages that contained manipulation, guilt trips, or financial requests. When they realized their usual tactics no longer worked, they had 2 choices: adjust to the new boundaries or lose contact entirely. Slowly, reluctantly, they began to adapt. Our communications became limited but healthier. Monthly video calls with clear time limits. Occasional emails about neutral topics. When my father mentioned being short on cash during one conversation, I smoothly changed the subject rather than engaging. The message was clear. I would maintain a relationship, but only on terms that respected my autonomy. The healing process hadn't been linear or simple. A few months after arriving in Japan, I had found an English-speaking therapist in Tokyo, Dr. Nakamura, who specialized in working with expatriates. Our weekly sessions helped me process the complex emotions around my family dynamics and cultural adjustment. You carry the weight of unmet childhood needs, Dr. Nakamura observed during one session. But you are now building an adult life where those needs can be met through healthy relationships and personal achievements. Journaling became a crucial part of my healing practice. Each evening, I wrote about my experiences, feelings, and insights. The pages chronicled not just my adventures in Japan, but my internal journey from seeking external validation to finding inner worth. Through a Japanese friend, I learned meditation techniques that helped quiet the critical internal voice that sounded suspiciously like my parents. Sitting in silence each morning, focusing on my breath, I practiced observing negative thoughts without attaching to them. The self-doubt that had once controlled me gradually lost its power. My relationship with my sister Danielle grew stronger despite the distance. Now in college herself, she was experiencing similar patterns of parental neglect and manipulation. Our shared experiences created a bond that distance couldn't weaken. We had weekly video chats where I offered the support and guidance I wished I'd had at her age. "You gave me permission to set boundaries," she told me during one call. "Watching you do it showed me it was possible." Aunt Gail remained my strongest family connection. She had recovered from her surgery and was planning to visit Japan for my second-year anniversary, an adventure she spoke about with infectious excitement during our video calls. "I've never been to Asia," she admitted. "But seeing how happy you were there, how could I not come?" My romantic relationship with Michael had developed slowly and thoughtfully. Unlike previous relationships where I had sought validation and approval, this connection was built on mutual respect and independent individuals choosing to be together. We enjoyed our time together, but maintained separate apartments, friends, and interests. "I like that you don't need me," he told me once, surprising me with his insight. "You want me in your life, but your happiness doesn't depend on me." That's healthier than most relationships I've known. At the language school, I had been promoted to mentor new teachers, sharing techniques I had developed for engaging Japanese students. The director praised my cultural sensitivity and innovative teaching methods, offering me additional advanced classes and a corresponding salary increase. My Japanese had improved enough to allow deeper cultural connections. I could now converse with Emi's family without translation, exchange book recommendations with Haruka, and chat with neighborhood shopkeepers who no longer saw me as just another temporary foreigner. Parents of my younger students began inviting me to family events, a sign of acceptance in a culture that traditionally maintained clear boundaries between professional and personal relationships. I attended cherry blossom viewings, summer festivals, and New Year celebrations, experiencing Japanese traditions from an insider's perspective rather than as a tourist. My parents eventually realized I wasn't coming back to our old patterns. Their communications gradually shifted from demands and guilt to cautious attempts at genuine connection. My mother asked about my teaching experiences. My father inquired about Japanese baseball. Small steps, but significant given where we had started. "They're trying," Aunt Gail confirmed during one of our calls. "They miss you in their way. And they're beginning to understand that the old relationship isn't an option anymore." Forgiveness came slowly. Not as a dramatic moment, but as a gradual release. I discovered that I could acknowledge the pain my parents had caused without letting it define me. I could remember their failures without bitterness. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or returning to toxic patterns. It meant freeing myself from the weight of resentment. As I stood at the Tokyo Sky re-observation deck on that anniversary day, I realized how profoundly my understanding of family had changed. Family wasn't just blood relation or obligation. It was a circle of chosen connections based on mutual respect and genuine care. My Japanese family of friends, colleagues, and students. My friends from the teaching program who shared the expatriate experience. Aunt Gail and Danielle connecting from across the ocean. Looking ahead. I had options I could never have imagined a year earlier. The language school had offered to sponsor advanced certification that could lead to a permanent position. Several universities in Tokyo had part-time openings for native English speakers with my qualifications. Graduate programs in international education accepted applications year-round. The frightened, wounded young woman who had boarded a plane with 2 suitcases and desperate courage had become someone I barely recognized. Someone who made choices based on desire rather than fear. Someone who understood that healthy love was demonstrated through actions, not just words or obligations. The sun began to set over Tokyo, casting the city in golden light. I took a photo to send to Aunt Gail, Danielle, and yes, even my parents. This view, this moment, this life I had created for myself was worth sharing. Perhaps the most profound lesson of my journey was that sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is distance. Distance to heal, to grow, to discover who we are outside of others' expectations. Sometimes we need to walk away from what hurts us before we can walk toward what heals us. I left the observation deck as darkness fell and Tokyo transformed into a sea of twinkling lights. Tomorrow would bring classes to teach, friends to meet, a language to practice, a culture to explore, a life built on my terms, not defined by absence or rejection, but by presence and choice. Have you ever had to create distance from someone to find yourself? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear that sometimes walking away is the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it. It's determined by you.